And they bumped into that, thinking that was going to take them across. And when they saw that it didn't, they liked the land that they bumped into. So that's when they went back to the Netherlands, told a bunch of people that they found a new land to start a new country. And that's the reason why I think they made New York. New York was considered the new Netherlands. And then that's how they came up with New Jersey and New Amsterdam, because all that was names of the different places in the Netherlands. So when they came to the New York part, they call everything was called New this, New that, New London.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's why it was an insult when people found out that when they wrote 8-hour woman, that woman was somebody who was, you know, was at the convention. She was at the convention. And I think she was a little jealous. She waited 7 years after that convention to say that that's the way. She was a writer. So she wrote novels and things like that.
Right.
So she made up a lot of the stuff, but she didn't remember.
Right.
It was only the guy who had that newspaper in New York that wrote what she said, what she really said.
So there is a document of what she really said.
The guy who was the writer for some type of anti-slavery newspaper. It was more liberal type of newspaper, and he had heard about her, so he wanted to definitely go to the convention and hear her speak. He wrote his version of what she said, like 3 days. He published it in his newspaper. That woman who wrote what she said waited 7 years.
Wow.
7 years, and you remember what she said, and he made her sound like she came from the start. You know, using nigger, you know, and talking like a southern slave. Yeah, she had her with a southern slave dialect. So that's how people realized it wasn't real. Because the woman, when she was in New York, her parents spoke Dutch, because that's who their masters was. They were Dutch. So that's the only language Sojourner knew was Dutch. Until she was sold to another family who didn't speak Dutch at all. And she got a severe whipping. She was just a little girl, you know, and he was hitting her with some kind of long stick. And he whipped her back up so bad that even as a grown woman, the whips were still there because she wasn't speaking English. So she went through all this, and then the woman tried to make her sound like she was a southern slave instead of a northern slave. And until today, a lot of people don't realize just how much slavery was in the north because they only think south. You know, they don't think north.
They abolished it first in the books, but their practice continued for much longer than people realize. Slavery in the north.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's when they found out.
They abolished it in the books, but they continue to practice it. You know, they passed a law saying slavery was over and done with, but then they would still have, you know, people having slaves.
Yeah, that's the reason I said, you know, people gotta find out about this. But a lot of people don't. You know, the Dutch started the slave trade in New York, and then I think it was the French found out that the Dutch was making all this money because the Dutch had started dominating that slave trade on that side and taking these slaves to South America and the Caribbean. So the French decided, well, let us get into the action. You know, and then the British decided they wanted to get into the action, so they started coming to New York.
Really involved in the slave trade.
They started coming to New York, but New York was dominantly Dutch people in the beginning. That's how they set up the Dutch colony. She didn't live in the city. She lived in New York State.
Okay, I got you.
But the city wasn't that far. I mean, it was some miles away.
Right.
But it wasn't that far. The city was still always overcrowded, always poor, it always had that appeal to it. Very, very bad. Very bad. But yeah, it's something. I mean, I became completely intrigued in finding out what really happened and how those Dutch, the Dutch slaves. And right now, the black people who live in the Netherlands, the young people are raising up and they starting their own revolutionary movement because they want the truth of what they went through or their parents and ancestors went through during that time.
Right.
And from reading other books, the Dutch are so embarrassed about what happened. They don't even talk about that.
Right. Right.
So these young black people, they want to talk about it. And, you know, and then I found out that all the countries, French, all those countries that was involved in Spanish, that was involved in the sleep, they're all embarrassed because all the black people all over the world want the truth to come out as to what they did. See, now they don't want to talk about it. Yeah, they don't want to talk about it.
And so that's why I feel like what we're doing here with Juneteenth VA is important because we have to have a conversation. And so what the goal is to be able to have a conversation in ways that people are not so defensive and so afraid of being called names or being chastised because we have to find out what really happened.
Right.
And that's the only way we can kind of move forward there. So our mission is to help people heal from the wounds of slavery without shame or blame. It's really not about trying to embarrass anybody or show them up, but really just to kind of find out what really happened.
Closure. Right.
Exactly.
And I remember how some of those students acted years ago when I was with you years ago, and we used to go to the schools.
Yeah.
And then some of those students would say, even the black people, getting up there saying, well, I don't see why we keep talking about this. That happened a long time ago. We need to forget about it. Then today, what happens? All these people feel as though they can go back to lynching black folks, shooting them in the back when they right in front of them, and putting their foot on their neck and killing them. All this stuff. How are we going to forget about it? I think about what those students said. How are we going to forget about it when they keep bringing it back to our memories? They are the ones causing us not to forget about it. So now we want closure.
Yeah, everybody needs closure.
Yep, we need closure.
But the way to closure is to have these conversations, to be able to talk about it, to be able to face the truth, of the past, and be able to understand how to move beyond it. So I think it's very timely now. When you're talking about going to schools, I don't know if you remember this picture. Do you remember this?
Yeah, that's from isn't that from one of your places?
It's from Abolitionist Museum. We did this.
That's Abolitionist Law Museum?
Well, this is a picture. I want to get this picture here. This is we were doing a play at a school, a middle school, and the teacher came and was really excited. He was showing me this picture, and he said, this kid who drew this picture never engages in the classroom work, but clearly he was engaged because he sat there and he drew this picture. And that tells you that learning happens in all kinds of different ways. And if you create an environment where people are comfortable, they will learn in their own way. But they will learn the same information and be able to have conversations about it.
Right.
That's what we got to
have.
Exactly. So I put this as one of my proudest moments in terms of the work that we do, because it's like showing like it's working. You know, I can't tell you how excited the teacher was. He's like, he came running over to me to show me this, and he's just like, this kid never engages in anything. And he had drawn this picture here. And so now what we want to do now is find this kid. He wrote his name down here, Jamil Martin, and it was in 2001. And I believe we were in Lafayette, Winona Middle School. So if anybody knows how we can find this young man, please let us know. Let him know that Juneteenth VA is looking for him, and we want to be able to see, you know, where he is and what he's doing at this point, you know, and does he remember even doing this, you know?